Hello, good morning, good afternoon, or good night as you are watching this webinar. We are here today to present the editorial, the third workshop, the foundations of mastering languages as a communication tool. We are on the basic shops. I've already spoken on previous, but I will speak again that these are 12 different areas that we are exploring here. We have already explored two of them, the gym and the bank. Now we are exploring the third one, which is the editorial. And we will finish this cycle of basic shops with the kindergarten. And the kindergarten is about traumas and emotions and dealing with them, with that kind of stuff. In here, we are talking about communication. This is the area. Because it is connected astrological with Gemini, and Gemini is an air sign. It is also to do with communication and with communication in family towards our neighbors, people who are close to us. And in some sense, it has to do with the act of expressing ourselves about our needs not met, and the way we should present them to the world in order to fulfill them. It is also to do with the area of the newspapers, the area of bringing something to the world in the sense of knowledge. Also, it is a shop which is ruled by Mercury, which is the god of communication, and also by the semi-god of Castor. And remember the story of Castor and Pollux. Sorry, Pollux was the demigod, Castor was the human. And those were two heroes of the War of Troy, which is related to the story or the stories of ancient Greece. About the Iliad and the Odyssey, which are from Homer, and speak about a war between the Trojans and the Greeks because of power and territory disputes. Okay, so this is basically operative way of dealing with the energies of the astrology. We are not going to be here in a webinar about astrology and about planets and some kind of mystical ways of dealing with reality, but from an operative and practical way, we are stating that the astrological field is applied to our lives and to what we do for a living. So the idea of operative astrology is what is the main or key idea of these 12 shops, okay? In this webinar, we are going to speak about the world of the press, of news, editorial, and the way of a redaction works, and understand the foundations and mastery of correct communication in languages, and understand that all we spoke different languages as we have different interests. It's not only a territorial difference, it's also a cultural one and a mental one, because in the air signs or houses, or if you prefer shops, as I say in these webinars, the main focus of each one of these areas has to do with a keen issue, and the keen issue or the essential issue, the base, the milestone, is the communication. In this shop is the communication. Okay, so let's on with the presentation of this webinar. Let's go to the second slide of this presentation, PowerPoint presentation. So the third workshop, the editorial workshop concept. As always, I will explain what is the concept of the workshop. Knowing the mind, which is the object that we use here to work. when we are working in a gym, we work the body. When we are working on a bank, we work the resources. And when we are working in editorial, we work the mind as an instrument of communication, as an instrument of transformation. So it's about the mind. It's about what we mind, and then we generate as a factor of communication. And also in the basis of this, we are always working on values, editorial values. What are the values of the newspapers, of the editorials, of any kind of communication? What are those values? Okay, so those are the editorial values. And that will go on to that in the third point. Then in the fourth, we are going to know the challenge of the editorial. And finally, we'll have here a description of a couple of techniques that we can use to improve our communication, okay? So this is the shop that is mainly concerned in bringing you a narrative and also tools in order to be more effective in the contexts, because context is everything in communication. What you can do with communication has to do with the context that you develop. And when you are developing that concept of context, you are also discovering a very powerful tool that permits you to get into realities, different realities. As the philosopher Socrates used to say, a thing can be and not can't be and not be in the same reality of facts, but it can be and not be if you are not in the same quality of reality. So if we change the context, a thing can be and not be. As for instance, if we think of an athlete, it can be complete in the sense of working in a gym, but is not complete if you are talking about a communicator. Sometimes it is a different context, okay? So each thing has a context, and the excellence of an athlete is not at the same time an excellence in communication, okay? He is excellent in that field. So we have different fields, we have different realities, different contexts. And this dissociation of realities is one of the techniques of this house of communication and mental ability of transmitting knowledge and ideas, okay? So it has to do with the means to get into the results, and that can change from context to context. So making dissociation of reality, it's what makes that something can be and not be in different kinds or types of realities. So a thing can be or not be, can't be and not be in the same reality, but it can be and not be in different realities, because it's different contexts, different narratives, different mind plans. There can be parallel realities. So this idea of parallel realities in communication, it's very important. It's a key issue, okay? So let's get into Ricardo Reis odds. I have more than one soul. They live in us innumerably or innumerable. If I think or feel, I ignore who thinks or feels. I'm just the place where you feel or think. I have more than one soul. There are more selves than myself. I still exist, indifferent to everyone. I make them silence, I speak. The crossed impulses, what I feel or don't feel, they dispute who I am. I ignore them, they dictate nothing. To whom I know, I write. When you write, when you speak, you create a reality, a narrative. And those are the permission to yourself to be more than one person, and be more than in one place, and be more than one reality. So be and not be in different realities is possible, and be different persons and combine different ideas, it is possible. The idea of heteronyms of Fernando Pessoa is to do exactly with this. Ricardo Reis is one of those heteronyms. There are other, as Alberto Caeiro, and this is what represents different beings inside our own being, according to mental languages, according to dissociation processes. And this is the basis of this workshop, okay? Knowing that what defines you is the way you communicate, and you can change it as you change the different ways of communicating, okay? So this is a cycle, the cycle of the 12 workshops, which are 12 areas of life, and this corresponds to 12 energies that we all have to work within us. The idea of a zodiac matrix is the meta model that we will use here as a basis, but the language is from the areas in question and not astrological. So each area has its own language, each area has its own dimension and way of communicating. So also different philosophies, different values, different ways of shaping reality and of communicating. Also different resources, also different bodies, also different feelings and emotions and traumas. And everything that is around each shop is an autonomous world that has its own energy, its own way of stating, but at the same time there are the same laws apply to all, the laws of service and the laws of transformative behaviors on our own. We serve ourselves and we serve the other, or we serve the community, but still, even if we have a basic shop, a relation shop, or a superior social shop, we all always are in service of something and in transformational process of something. And this is the important message. Okay, so there are 12 distinct programs presented here in 12 successive webinars. This is the third webinar. We will have 9 webinars and present coaching course with which is associated. In the end, we have this technique. In this case, we have the journalist of top, and we will give you some more tools how to improve your communication. Okay, so the third workshop, it is related to the myth of Castor and Pollux, the second half god, refuses immortality in detriment of helping and being with his brother. So solidarity, and in communication, it's the most extreme example of being solidary with other, because when we are communicating, we are giving our time to other persons. We are giving our space, our language, our mind to someone else. And this is the most clear gift that we can mend to someone when we are trying to reach another person, another reality, and give them something and be with that person. It's completely altruistic value. Okay, so communicating is a total altruistic movement. So someone who has this energy is someone who is being altruistic. Even it is a basic shop, a shop with our own communication, it's the first step to being altruistic. Okay, because in the first shop we are dealing with our own body, then we external image, then we are dealing with resources, which is the internal image. And here we are not focused in something that belongs to us. We are focused in communicating, externalizing what we are and what we feel. Also, when we develop the fourth shop, we are dealing with traumas, our own traumas. So it's a bit ourselves. But communication is the first step outside from the basic shops. Okay, so it's a step further. Still, it is internal. It is our own image that is communicated, and that we need to have this idea, this notion. To be more precise, we have to have this notion that we are simultaneously inside ourselves and outside ourselves when we are communicating. Okay, so each workshop works a life team. Here our communication, the exploration of its virtuality, works, and efficiency. We work on our armor, our mind, our logic. Okay, so the newspapers, knowing the mind, So knowing the mind, actively listen to the mind, understand where are the weaknesses, the strengths, challenges, and opportunities when we can find them. Auto-suggestion, mentalization exercises repeated when waking up and going to bed to reprogram internal language. We get to excellence in any area, and this is no exception. Communication is no exception when we deliver in a constant and repeated way. If we repeat patterns, we are going to incorporate that patterns in our way of life, in our way of thinking, in our way of being. So you must not ignore the repeated patterns in order to achieve higher and higher levels of ourselves. Okay, so this is very important. Modeling or recognizing characteristic in excellent strategies that should be copied. So it's about the mental, about the strategy, mentalization to communicate, but it's strategy that is here in place, because you are always, when you communicate, doing strategy. Okay, embracing difficulties, non-violent internal dialogue. This is very important, and the basis of this shop is all about Marshall Rosenberg and his non-violent communication, which is stated on transmitting to our intervener, to the other parts, to someone we are talking to, our most profound needs. So to go into our needs, to understand our needs, and to transmit it and transmute it, is the basis to doing an excellent job in the strategic field of communication. Because if you have a non-violent communication, when we state it from our heart, from our true and real needs, we'll get the help we need in order to transform our reality. So this is very important. Self-care, gratitude, creation of a social panorama. Okay, knowing the mind, new type of attitude. And here, based on awareness and clarity of the message, 21 days of repeating auto-suggestion patterns for a new model of world. Okay, so here the writing and the reading, it's essential, because one of the techniques that we can apply to ourselves is use of creative narrative to ourselves. Okay, and this is a very important technique. Use the writing in order to transform your mind, transform the way you interact with the world, and this is very important. 21 days of repeating suggestion patterns for a new model of world. Self-control, to become aware, to develop mental agility. You must be aware of yourself, of your personalities, personas you have inside yourself, in order to develop mental agility. And this is knowing the mind. Understand that the mind has plans, has different plans, different vibrational standards that you can achieve by transforming your mind through communication. Okay, and this is knowing the mind. So permanent active listening, to focusing, defocusing, and refocusing reality. So always a mind process, always a mental transformative path of improvement. I bring you Newsroom, which is a series. It's not by Netflix. I believe it's from a different channel, television channel. Still, it was very famous. Still, I would say 219, it was 2019, it was not 200, 2019 was a very important show in cable television. It addresses how journalism is being destroyed, how the truth behind the facts is no longer important, and now facts are not so important as they were yesterday, because more and more we are working with narratives. We have a transformation in this field. We are losing the attachment to facts. And if we think about what is happening also in the resources area, people are losing their ability to build resources and they are more and more focused on spending. And this is not good, as in this area is not good being torn apart from facts in order to create narratives. In this particular passage of the newsroom, the journalist here in presence, he is focused in deconstructing an argument. So you are going to see an example of deconstruction of an argument, and this is a form of that idea that I was trying to say, you to decontextualize and to do that ability to change realities. It's about America being the first nation in the world, and he disagrees with that, bringing to the argument his own ideas based on facts. Let's see a bit what this is about.
Can you say why America is the greatest country in the world?
Diversity and opportunity.
Lewis, freedom and freedom. So let's keep it that way.
Well, why is it
Not the greatest country in the world, Professor. That's my answer.
You're saying?
Yes.
Let's talk about
Fine. Sharon, the NEA is a loser. Yeah, it accounts for a penny out of her paycheck, but he gets to hit you with it anytime he wants. It doesn't cost money. It costs votes. It costs airtime, column inches. You know why people don't like liberals? Because they lose. If liberals are so fucking smart, how come they lose so goddamn always? Hey, and with a straight face, you're going to tell students that America is so star-spangled awesome that we're the only ones in the world who have freedom? Canada has freedom. Japan has freedom. The UK, France, Italy, Germany, Spain, Australia, Belgium has freedom. So 207 sovereign states in the world, like 180 of them have freedom.
All right.
And yeah, you, sorority girl, just in case you accidentally wander into a voting booth one day, there's some things you should know. One of them is there's absolutely no evidence to support the statement that we're the greatest country in the world. We're 7th in literacy, 27th in math, 22nd in science, 49th in life expectancy, 178th in infant mortality, 3rd in median household income, number 4 in labor force, and number 4 in exports. We lead the world in only 3 categories: number of incarcerated citizens per capita, number of adults who believe angels are real, and defense spending, where we spend more than the next 26 countries combined, 25 of whom are allies. Now, none of this is the fault of a 20-year-old college student, but you nonetheless are, without a doubt, a member of the worst generation ever. So when you ask what makes us the greatest country in the world, I don't know what the fuck you're talking about. Yosemite? Sure used to be. We stood up for what was right. We fought for moral reasons. We passed laws, struck down laws for moral reasons. We waged wars on poverty, not poor people. We sacrificed. We cared about our neighbors. We put our money where our mouths were, and we never beat our chest. We built great big things, made ungodly technological advances, explored the universe, cured disease, and we cultivated the world's greatest artists and the world's greatest economy. We reached for the stars, acted like men. We aspired to intelligence. We didn't belittle it. It didn't make us feel inferior. We didn't identify ourselves by who we voted for in the last election, and we didn't scare so easy.
Also an excellent example of dissociation. He begins with facts to defend one position, and then he goes and defend the other with new arguments and facts. So this ability to discontextualize, making a new contextualization of reality, is a clear example of dissociation. Dissociation is the basis of this shop. Okay, so when you are communicating true facts, which is the first value, which is truth, then you have different opinions or perspectives, points of view, and then you have this dissociation, the ability to see both arguments and to combine them in a final offering conclusion. And by doing so, you are also respecting the final value, which has to do with communicational responsibility and journalistic responsibility to make opinion, but first and more important, which is the foremost essential thing that you must have is to state things based on facts, because communicating is always a non-aggressive address to needs, a non-aggressive communication addressed to needs that begin with facts. And only doing that, when you have contextualization, we can do the dissociation process in order to be respectful in communication and to reality. Our needs and the other needs be addressed. And this is basically what he is doing in this dissociation answer, okay?
We were able to be all these things and do all these things because we were informed by great men who were revered. First step in solving any problem is recognizing there is one. America is not the greatest country in the world anymore. Enough?
So it is important to close it with a conclusion, but at the same time, the important thing to bring in this excerpt of the series is to reflect on how we communicate, okay? So let's get on next. Editorial values: truth, deepening, points of view, communicating, and journalistic responsibility. As I was saying, the first value is truth. Always look within yourself to define your request is based on your real needs. Determine the facts, and this is very important, based on understanding the request based on unmet needs of others also, but facts is the key issue. Deepening, going further, getting into different point of views, develop mental agility that allows you to anticipate and adapt response based on active listening to others and their feelings. Points of view, and here you have the dissociation, ability to perceive dissociation in communication, contextualization, and reframing tools to arrive at requests based on unmet needs. And this, it's the pivotal, or if you prefer, this is the milestone of the techniques and editorial values. Then communicational and journalistic responsibility: control the reaction of the mind, respect others, and understand their requests without the need to respond to them. Proceed within ethical limits, okay? So editorial values: find the fundamentals, communicator code, truth, deepening, dissociation, ethics. Ability to think in an adaptive way, never stop contextualizing, adapt the rhythm of thought to the challenge, develop internal hair, permanently making internal and external obstacles more flexible with an intelligence in movement, developing the mind's automatic intuition for survival against external threats and internal through an increasing greater awareness of communicational and journalistic responsibility. To be able to cope our basic needs to our higher obligations, it's what is important in communication in order to have journalistic responsibility, and the development of criteria in the choice and adaptation of thought to the desired final result, knowing that you have control on your thoughts, on your mental, and by consequence on your communication, okay? So it's consequential, what we do with our communication from what we are thinking, our mindset, okay? The fundamentals of the communicator code, of course, are truth, deepening, dissociation, and ethics. And let's get into editorial values. In this script of the series, Newsroom, we are talking about something that is not based, okay, in facts. We can also use the narrative. We can also use what we call the creation of mimic in order to capture the audience. But in the end of the day, facts are essential. And what this excerpt want to reflect is about the absence of facts can make you be out of charts, okay? In when you are in a newsroom, as in this case, in a TV channel, that is absolutely essential, okay? So a little failure can destroy the moment. Okay, so when we are communicating, every single inch of our communication must be assertive and must be based on facts in order to be effective. Okay, the reflection is something to do with this. Okay.
Hey Joey,
Yes, ma'am.
look in the envelope. Did you hear the sound go out of the?
Did I hear the sound go out after what? Matt?
So this is about maintaining respect, realizing unmet needs, active listening, position you through journaling. Journaling is that technique that I was earlier talking about. You write your own emotions in order to understand yourself, live your story in order to perceive the story of others, protect yourself and admit mistakes. There are no absolute truths. There are emotional reasons, truth, point of view, fact, and fable. What is the difference? Assertiveness and imagination, control over emotions to be able to refrain and dissociate without violence. Okay.
What was the rest of the message?
What?
I'm not just saying this because I'm high. Saying what? What was the rest of the message? What was the rest of the message?
10 seconds. 10 seconds.
What did the rest of the message mean in together?
It was a hallucination. I got asked the question at Northwestern, what makes America the greatest country in the world? There was a woman who looked like she was sitting in the audience, and there were a lot of lights and a lot of noise in my head, and I could have sworn that the woman who looked like was holding up a pad. It was you.
Yeah.
It was you.
Okay, so let's get on with our presentation. Here is the Knight of the Gemini, and is without his mask. Know your challenge. This is the New York Times building. Understand the complexity that forms communication with other human beings, self-knowledge, knowledge of challenge of the other, knowledge of linguistic channels and knowledge of noise conditions, which much of time influence, as we saw earlier, the communication, knowledge of conditions of media space, principles of information and counter-information, intuition and agility to adapt, embodiment of mind process for excellence and victory over oneself. Active listening in self-knowledge through a model of physical transformation, master the law of Sun Tzu 5 principles to be able to define the right moment to launch assertive attack, develop corporal intelligence through knowledge of emotions, direction of thoughts, change of mentality, and model of the world to release the transformative air of mental agility, growth through constant adaptation of mind through the body. The Washington Post, which is another newspaper very known in the United States, and communication development techniques. These communication development techniques are part of the program that I developed for the top communicator program or journalist, the TCM. And the TCM gives you a lot of tools in order to improve your communication, be a better communicator of your internal needs and of needs of others, and to do dissociation and communication with languages to develop your mental plan of communicating. Okay, so the TCM Top Communicator has some base on the Marshall Rosenzberg, here it is, non-aggressive communication, CNA. Marshall Rosenberg was very keen on this idea of the giraffe facing the jackal and the way they interact, and you have this predatory way of interacting or the cooperative way of interacting as a communicator. So as a communicator, you should be a non-aggressive communicator, okay? You should be listening more, you should be more keen on other stories, and it's based on that you should be giving your response. It is essential that you don't communicate in order to respond, but to communicate in order to answer and understand what is being placed in front of you, what is being asked you to do, what is the asking of the other person. Okay, so you must be all the time keen on what is the interest, the need that the other person wants to bring into the table. So only when you understand what is being put into the table, and that has to do with the internal difficulties and values of that person, only then you can do a good dissociation in order to meet those needs. Even if you are not going to solve them, at least you are going to give tools to that person to solve their own problems, their own needs, okay? So rapport is essential, active listening and receiving emotions. And that is the ability of being the giraffe. The giraffe communicates from the heart. It is the mammal that has the biggest heart. And that's why it is the giraffe versus the jackal. The jackal is a very aggressive predator, and we have the giraffe, and also the giraffe has the longest neck in nature, and this is also to do with the element of the neck, because we communicate through these glandulas in our throat, and the idea of having a big throat is related with the heart, and that is the giraffe. This symbolic way of writing, it is also part of the ability of Rosenberg to explain us the importance of the non-aggressive communication, the CNA. Okay, so differentiate observations from judgments. What is an observation? What is a judgment? If you are communicating to make a response, you are not listening in order to understand what is being put into the table, because as we are going to see, much of time people don't communicate to get their needs satisfied. Many times they just communicate to express themselves, and that only can be distinguished if you are attentive to what is being said to you. Okay, so differentiate observations from judgment, recognize emotions that are associated, and this is the plan where you connect the communication with the feelings, with the trauma, and how you relate this shop of editorial with the shop of kindergarten, because they are linked, as we can make the link between the body and the resources, and those are all four internal shops, but they are all connected one another. Okay, and that's important to have this in mind when we are devising and at the same time working on the techniques of each one of these shops, because they are not totally apart from each other. They are different boxes, but at the same time they are connected boxes. Okay, as all knowledge and all reality is a complex reality, as in Edgar Morin principles, we live in a complex world, not a complicated one because there are simple processes, but in a complex one because different and simple processes form a complexity. Okay, and this is going to philosophy and sociology of Edgar Morin, but it's important to speak it here because we are talking about communication. So emphasize your emotion, recognize emotions that are associated, emphasize emotions by recognizing needs that descend from emotions, place in order, ask for what satisfies our needs, use visualization through or because of the new senses. Okay, so being able to use visualization, sensation is important. Also request for clarification, connection on mutual strategy. So the differences, when you communicate, we can ask for some kind of satisfying need, or we can just communicate for having clarification. So this communication can relate to connection, to clarification, or mutual strategy. Concretization of language that is not aggressive, awareness of interpretation in assessment of situation observed and felt, turn judgments into observations, okay, do the way around, don't judge, just observe, transform negative senses into positive and empowering sentences, request as a purpose of communication, response to clarification, connection, and mutual strategy, requirement for clarification, clarifying what has been constantly understand it. Okay, so many times what we think we understand, it's not what reality is about, okay? And this is important to know. Requirement for connection, seeking to understand others through their actual behavior, look for the behavior in order to understand and complete the information. Requirement for action, mutual strategy, establishing new information sharing focus, visualization of complex language, here once more the complex notion of reality, appeal to visual elements in creation of non-aggressive language, integration and representation of systems, wish technique applicable to CNA, to non-aggressive communication. And this wish technique is, the swish technique is about transmuting realities and making dissociation, timeline and non-violent communication, feeling investigation and non-violent communication, communicate from emotions to feelings, communication from feelings to needs, communicate to needs to interests, and communication of interests. Again, in a circular way, to positions in order to comprehend and disconstrue what positions are. Impossibility to communicate from positions, okay, so the process has been inverted. Root of communication, what is the basis of communication, request in the genesis of communication, also, it is the basis, is the request need, okay? The basis of any communication is the request need. Change communication patterns, talk like a child and act like an adult, be firm and flexible in communication, know how to conduct a negotiation, dismantling functional hypocrisy, and this is important. It's not a technique from this shop, it's a technique from the 10th shop, the parliament, but it is important to understand it in the process of dissociation, and that's why it's here. Search for the truth in causes, position yourself on the side of the causes and away from the effects. Be an excellent communicator, okay? These are the sum of the techniques and videos that I will present in the online course of the top communicator program, okay? So growth levels of communication or communicator. Communicate with family level, at an employment level, organizations, institutions, blogs, and editorials, okay? This is a gradative way of progressing. So in the investigative journalism and political press as challenges that you have to address in this shop, okay? So final to hand to scripts of newsroom, okay? The first one is about hiring and the greater full speech, okay? About this idea of how to communicate effectively. So communicate to satisfy your unmet needs, okay? This is the synthesis of our techniques.
Who is the girl who is applying to the internship? She looks so familiar to me. I'll tell you who she looks like. She looks exactly like.
Good show.
I don't care.
Okay.
Sorority girl. You're the girl, right?
I'm Jennifer Johnson,
Just graduated Northwestern?
Stay calm.
a year early.
You asked me that moronic question, and then my world came apart, and she came here, and I landed in the tabloids, and I got death threats, and my job is constantly in jeopardy, and you ruined my life?
Again, just.
Yes, that was me.
What the hell are you doing here?
I'm applying for an internship.
Why?
I watched the show and I read the New York Magazine article, and I know what a greater fool is. And I want to be one.
Camelot. She's a kid at the end of Camelot. Ask me again.
I'm sorry.
Ask me your idiot question again.
What makes America the greatest country in the world?
You do. Hire her. 2:30 back. Nice.
Bring it home.
Who is the girl sitting in the back of the newsroom?
I don't know.
I've
Listen.
been sitting there all day and all through the broadcast, and I feel like I know her.
Yeah. The greater fool is actually an economic term. It's a patsy.
Thanks for that.
For the rest of us to profit, we need a greater fool. Someone who will buy long and sell short. Most people spend their lives trying not to be the greater fool. We toss him the hot potato. We die for his seat when the music stops. The greater fool is someone with the perfect blend of self-delusion and ego to think that he can succeed where others have failed. This whole country was made by greater fools.
You're staying?
And in a sense, this synthesize what was the answer of all the situation. In order to achieve a good communication, we have to be in the core of what is our audience and understand our audience. And that is also the basis of this shop. Being a good communicator is being a good observer. It's having keen to its values. Of course, it's important the truth. Of course, it's important to be effective on knowing different opinions and being able to dissociate reality and having that ethic of journalist and communicating responsibility. But it is important to understand that we are dealing with communication and with non-attended needs, and those needs are the basis of everything. So the greater fool, of course, is to believe that we can solve. And that is also the main reason behind everything that we've been teaching here about non-violent communication. When we understand how we operate, we understand how others operate, and how the communication will result. So there is an illusion that must be met, but it must be met on the right moment. And understanding that is understanding communication. So it's not manipulation, it's dissociation. And dissociation has to do to understand that things must function in different plans, that everything is needed, even the different ways of thinking, in order to transform reality. And that is the real reality behind the grateful speech that they are talking here about. So once more, satisfy the unmet needs. Okay, basically is that we do in communication. So deepest gratitude for watching this webinar on communication. I hope we be together in the next months and years, developing the techniques and learning more about this fantastic area of knowledge and needs. And I hope to see you soon. This is the English webinar of the editorial, and I will use the site in order to make more videos, because it's a vlog and a blog, and I hope to see you soon there. Okay, so see you next time. Bye.